next thing I wanted to talk about just briefly, we won't talk about it too long, is Sam Hartman was named, ESPN, I should say, recently named their top 50 newcomers for the 2023 college football season. So these are guys that are new faces to certain schools, right? So not newcomers in the traditional sense that they're new to college football, which usually is just true freshmen, or sometimes people do newcomers as true freshmen and redshirt freshmen. This is newcomers to teams more so than college football, and Sam Hartman was on that list. And it was one of the few, I would say, good lists or good things that we've seen from ESPN this summer about Notre Dame. Sam Hartman was ranked number 2 on the list. I'll just briefly share with you what Tom Van Haren, who wrote the article, said. He said Hartman was one of the top quarterback transfers this offseason and is coming to Notre Dame at the perfect time. Drew Pine and Tyler Buchner both transferred, and the Irish were searching for stability at the position. Hartman was a 5-year starter at Wake Forest. Kind of, not really. It's not really accurate. He was a 4-year starter in 2019. He only started 2 games. One was off the bench, or both of them were due to injury to the starter, Jamie Newman. So he was really a 4-year starter at Wake Forest. So that's not accurate. He earned third team All ACC honors in 2022. He threw for 12,967 yards and 110 touchdowns with 41 interceptions in his Deacon's career, and is now tasked with leading the Irish in 2023. So obviously that's a cool thing for Notre Dame and cool thing for Sam Hartman this season. It's been really strange kind of looking at pro football, or at ESPN and what they've said about Notre Dame this offseason. But obviously they got this one right, I believe. When you look at newcomers this season, there are very few that are expected to have the impact or have already had the impact in college football that Sam Hartman has had. I think you could argue that he should be the top newcomer when you consider past production, when you consider the potential impact that he is going to have on his football team. Travis Hunter from Colorado was ranked number 1. He transferred from Jackson State. He was a former 5-star recruit. He's going to play receiver and cornerback. Obviously, that's the biggest name from a recruiting standpoint, but it's hard for me to think that anyone is going to be tasked with having as much of an impact on their football team as Sam Hartman is being asked to have at Notre Dame this season. But we saw also on there, Notre Dame had several opponents that were on the list. USC had 4 players on the list. Linebacker Mason Smith, who was a transfer from Oklahoma State. Wide receiver Dorian Singer, transfer from Arizona. Defensive tackle Bear Alexander, who transferred from Georgia. And then Zachariah Branch, who is a freshman wide receiver. Ohio State had Cardinal Tate, a freshman wideout. NC State had quarterback Brennan Armstrong, who transferred from Virginia. And Clemson had defensive tackle Peter Woods, who is also a freshman. You all know this, right? I'm always hard on ESPN and some of the different things they do, but I got to admit, so this has been a strange offseason. Just how some of the very odd things that ESPN has said and done about Notre Dame this year. We saw an article recently by one of their analytics guys. He named the most 25 impactful players on the college football playoff this year, and some of them were players that are going to have an impact on teams that he thought are playoff contenders, and then he had some guys that were spoilers. Didn't have Tyler Buchner on there, no one from Notre Dame. And so he thinks one of two things. Number one is Notre Dame won't play the role of spoiler to 3 playoff teams that he had, 3 teams he has in his top 10, so clear playoff potential teams. And then he doesn't think that obviously Notre Dame is a playoff contender as well. So it was a very strange ranking. He had Tyler Buchner number 5 on that list, but the guy that beat him out isn't on the list. It was a very, very odd ranking. We've seen ESPN multiple times list Jaden Greathouse as a tight end. Recently, that same person who does the analytics guy was talking about, was writing a comment about Notre Dame and being critical of Notre Dame, and he was talking about Howard Cross. And he mentioned how Howard Cross is undersized for a typical 3-3-5 defense, which is true. Howard Cross is undersized for a typical 3-3-5 defense. The problem is Notre Dame doesn't run a 3-3-5 defense. Matter of fact, Notre Dame rarely lined up in a 3-3-5 defense last season. And when they did line up with 3 defensive linemen on the field, which was rare, it was in a third down situation. So it wasn't a base look where you'd be expecting a nose tackle to be a 2-gap type of player to set, to eat up blocks and those type of things to begin with. So just like little simple things like that you would expect an outlet that is as dominant in college football world like ESPN to have better takes than that. You'd expect them to know that Sam Hartman was a 3-year starter, not a 4-year starter at Wake Forest. So they've had a very, very strange offseason, and clearly ESPN doesn't think very highly of this 2023 Notre Dame football team. But we'll